"Bury me here," the Black Widow begged, her trembling voice cutting through the desert silence as the weathered rancher wrapped calloused fingers around her wrist, pulling her from the sand, then froze when he saw the crescent birthmark that matched his own. The mining town had branded her cursed, responsible for cave-ins and death, expecting the desert to swallow what they couldn't destroy. But the solitary rancher who found her carries secrets of his own, childhood memories of a sister sold into slavery decades ago. She possesses geological knowledge that threatens a conspiracy reaching from corrupt mayors to territorial officials, while he holds the key to family mysteries that could rewrite both their histories. Their survival depends on uncovering truths buried deeper than any mine shaft. Will recognition destroy them both, or will blood prove stronger than the forces hunting her down? The torches flickered against Millfield's dusty streets like angry fireflies. Clara Jefferson pressed her back against the cold stone of the general store, clutching her husband's worn Bible to her chest. 3 weeks since they buried Thomas, 3 weeks since the whisper started. She peered around the corner. Mayor Thornfield's men mounted their horses, their faces grim in the orange light. Their leader spat into the dirt and pointed toward the cemetery. "Check his grave again. She's got to have hidden something there." Clara's heart hammered. They knew. Somehow they knew Thomas had discovered something before the cave-in. Something worth killing for. She slipped through the shadows between buildings, her bare feet silent on the packed earth. The locket around her neck felt heavy, its strange contents clicking softly with each step. Thomas had pressed it into her hands the night before he died, his eyes wild with fear. "Keep this safe, Lark. Whatever happens to me, keep this safe." The cemetery gates creaked as she pushed through. Thomas's headstone stood crooked, hastily carved. Someone had left a note wedged beneath a rock. Clara's hand shook as she unfolded the paper. "Leave town, or join your husband." The sound of hoofbeats echoed from the main street. Clara stuffed the note into her dress and ran. Behind her, the torches grew brighter. The desert stretched endlessly under the star-filled sky. Clara stumbled over rocks and thorny bushes, her water nearly gone. The men had stopped chasing her hours ago, but she kept running. Better to die in the wilderness than face whatever they had planned. Her legs gave out near a dried riverbed. The sand felt cool against her burning cheek. Vultures circled overhead, patient as death itself. "Please," she whispered to the empty sky, "let it be quick." The sun climbed higher. Clara's lips cracked. Her tongue felt thick and useless. She thought of Thomas, of their small cabin, of the dreams they'd shared. All gone now, buried under suspicion and hate. Footsteps crunched on gravel. Clara forced her eyes open. A tall figure approached, leading a spotted horse. The man wore a weathered hat pulled low over his face. Josiah Cross had been tracking his stolen cattle since dawn. The hoofprints led toward the old riverbed where Apache used to make camp. He'd lost 3 head this week, probably to drifters heading west. The woman lay crumpled in the sand like a broken doll. Josiah had seen plenty of desert casualties over the years. Pilgrims who underestimated the heat. Prospectors who got turned around. Most didn't make it this far from town. He knelt beside her. She was young. Maybe 25, with skin dark as coffee beans and hands soft as a lady's. Not a traveler, then. Someone from town. "Ma'am, you alive?" Her eyelids fluttered. "Bury me here," she whispered. Something about her voice made him look closer. Her dress was torn, but well made. Good fabric. A preacher's wife, maybe, or a shopkeeper's daughter. But what was she doing out here alone? Josiah slipped his arms under her shoulders and lifted. Her head fell back, revealing a delicate chain around her neck. The locket caught the morning light, its surface etched with intricate patterns his mother had described in her final days. His breath caught. The crescent-shaped birthmark on the woman's wrist matched his own exactly. "Clara?" The name escaped before he could stop it. The woman's eyes opened, focusing on his face with surprising clarity. Intelligence burned there, sharp as a knife edge. This wasn't just some lost traveler. This was someone who knew things, dangerous things. In the distance, dust clouds marked approaching riders. Thornfield's men, still hunting. Josiah's ranch sat hidden in a canyon 5 miles south, protected by rocky walls and thorny brush. His mother's voice echoed in his memory, telling stories of a sister sold away when he was just a boy. A sister too smart for her own good, she'd said. Too curious about things that weren't her place to know. The riders drew closer. Josiah made his choice. He lifted the woman onto his horse and swung up behind her. Her weight felt familiar somehow, like coming home after a long journey. As they rode toward the canyon, Clara's fevered mind wandered to the secrets hidden in Thomas's Bible. The mining surveys, the geological maps, the proof of what really lay beneath Millfield's dusty streets. She'd spent years studying rock formations and soil samples, learning to read the Earth's language when no one was watching. Knowledge that could reshape the territory's future. Knowledge that had already cost Thomas his life. The locket pressed against her chest, its contents more valuable than gold. If she lived long enough to use them, if you are enjoying this story of how buried secrets change two strangers forever, don't forget to comment where you are tuning in from to show how this story can connect us across any distances, backgrounds, and hearts, because what will happen in the next 15 minutes in the Arizona territory will completely change everything they thought they knew about family, justice, and survival. Josiah's ranch house crouched between red canyon walls like a wounded animal. The wooden structure had seen better decades, its roof patched with tin and hope. He carried Clara inside, her breathing shallow but steady. The bedroom smelled of dust and old leather. Josiah placed her on his mother's quilt, the same one that had covered him during childhood fevers. Clara's dark skin contrasted sharply against the faded blue fabric. He fetched water from the well, his hands trembling slightly. The birthmark on her wrist haunted him, identical to his own. Impossible coincidences didn't exist in the desert, only buried truths waiting to surface. Clara's eyes opened as he pressed a damp cloth to her forehead. She studied his face with scientific precision, cataloging features like a surveyor mapping terrain. "You're safe here," Josiah said. She struggled to sit up. "Nowhere's safe." From who? Clara's fingers found her locket instinctively. Men who kill for what they can't understand. Outside, horses approached. Josiah moved to the window, rifle in hand. 3 riders picked their way down the canyon trail, their badges glinting in the afternoon sun. Mayor Thornfield's deputies. "Stay quiet," Josiah whispered. Clara pulled Thomas's Bible closer. The book contained more than scripture. Hidden between pages of psalms were detailed geological surveys, soil samples pressed flat like flowers, and hand-drawn maps showing mineral deposits that shouldn't exist according to official records. The lead deputy hammered on the door. "Open up, Cross." "We know you're in there." Josiah stepped onto the porch, closing the door behind him. "What do you want, Hayes?" Deputy Hayes spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Looking for someone. Black woman, about 25, dangerous fugitive." "Fugitive from what?" "Murder. Killed her husband and 2 other miners with some kind of curse." Josiah kept his expression neutral. "Curses aren't real, Hayes. Tell that to the families burying their dead." Hayes pushed past him toward the door. "Mind if we look around?" "Matter of fact, I do mind." The deputy's hand moved to his gun. "You harboring criminals now, Cross?" "I'm protecting my property." "You got a warrant?" Hayes backed down, but his eyes burned with frustrated authority. "We'll be watching this place. Anyone helps that witch ends up in a cell." The deputies rode away, their threats hanging in the air like smoke. Josiah watched until they disappeared over the canyon rim, then returned inside. Clara sat at his kitchen table, examining soil samples she'd pulled from her dress pocket. She held each one to the light, studying color and texture with practiced expertise. You know about rocks, Josiah observed. I know about lies. Clara spread the samples across the wooden surface. These came from different mine shafts around Millfield. Official reports say they're worthless. But look at this. She pointed to tiny silver flecks in the darkest sample. This ore is rich enough to fund a small war. Someone's been filing false reports to keep land prices low. Josiah leaned closer. The woman spoke with authority he'd never heard from anyone, let alone someone the town branded as cursed. How do you know all this? My husband taught me to read the earth, but I taught myself to read the liars. Clara opened Thomas's Bible carefully. Between pages of scripture lay pressed leaves, mineral samples, and detailed sketches of underground formations. Years of secret study compressed into a portable laboratory. Thomas discovered the main vein 3 weeks ago, enough silver to make Millfield the richest town in the territory. He went to Mayor Thornfield first, thinking they'd be partners. What happened? Thornfield offered to buy our claim for $50. When Thomas refused, the mine collapsed the next day. Pure coincidence, according to the official report. Josiah studied her face. Intelligence blazed there, sharp as cut glass. This wasn't grief talking. This was calculated analysis from someone who understood both geology and murder. There's something else, Clara said quietly. You called me Clara earlier, but nobody's called me that since I was 6 years old. Josiah's pulse quickened. What did they call you? Lark. For the songs I used to sing. Clara rolled up her sleeve, exposing the crescent birthmark fully. My mother said it looked like a new moon. Said I had a brother somewhere with the same mark. The room fell silent except for wind whistling through canyon walls. Josiah pushed up his own sleeve, revealing the identical crescent on his wrist. Our mother died 2 winters ago, he said slowly. Spent her last days telling me stories about my sister. Said you were sold to a family in Louisiana when you were small. Said you were too smart for your own good. Clara's hand trembled as she traced the matching birthmark. She used to sing to me. Something about mockingbirds and diamond rings. Josiah's throat tightened. The same lullaby that had haunted his dreams for 30 years. Clara stood abruptly, pacing to the window. This doesn't change anything. Thornfield's men will keep hunting until they find what Thomas hid. What did he hide? The deed to our mining claim. Legal proof that we own the richest silver deposit in Arizona territory. Clara's reflection wavered in the glass. It's buried with him, and I'm the only one who knows exactly where. Outside, the sun painted the canyon walls blood red. Somewhere in Millfield, powerful men planned their next move. The game had changed now. It wasn't just about covering up one murder anymore. It was about controlling the future of an entire territory. The canyon held its secrets like a closed fist. Clara knelt beside Josiah's dried well, running her fingers through the sandy soil. Her trained eye caught what others missed. The slight discoloration. The mineral deposits that shouldn't exist at this elevation. Your well isn't dry, she said. It's just looking in the wrong place. Josiah frowned. Been digging wells on this land for 15 years. Clara stood, brushing dust from her hands. You've been digging where water should be. I'm talking about where water actually is. She walked 30 paces east, then knelt again. The soil here looked identical to Josiah's untrained eye. Clara sifted it between her fingers, tasting it, holding it to the light. Red iron oxide deposits, clay particles with high moisture retention. Underground stream runs right beneath us, maybe 8 feet down. How can you possibly know that? Clara smiled, for the first time since he'd found her. When I was 12, a mine foreman named Samuel Hendricks caught me studying rock samples behind the company store. Most men would have shooed me away. Samuel was different. She continued examining the soil, her movements precise and practiced. He'd been a geologist back east before the silver rush brought him west. Started teaching me after hours. How to read soil composition, how to trace water tables, how to predict where veins of ore would run. Josiah watched her work with growing amazement. Why would he teach a child? Because I remembered everything. Every lesson, every technique, every formula. Clara's voice grew quiet. Samuel said I had the best geological mind he'd ever seen. But when other miners found out, they complained to management. Said it wasn't natural for someone like me to know such things. What happened to him? Transfer to California. But not before he taught me his most important lesson. Never let them see how much you know until you're ready to use it. Clara marked the spot with a small stone cairn. Dig here. 6 feet down, you'll hit clay. Push through it. Water's just underneath. Josiah fetched his shovel, still skeptical. The ground felt no different from anywhere else on his property. But Clara's confidence was absolute. She knew things that couldn't be learned from books alone. By sunset, muddy water seeped into the hole. By full dark, it ran clear and cold. Josiah stared at the impossible well, then at the woman who'd made it real. There's more, Clara said. Your land sits on a natural aquifer. With proper irrigation, you could grow crops year-round, feed half the territory. How do you see these things? Clara knelt beside the new well, cupping the water in her palms. When I was 14, I predicted a cave-in at the Morrison mine. Told Samuel the support beams couldn't handle the limestone pressure. He passed my warning to the supervisors. She paused, memory darkening her features. They evacuated the white workers first. By the time they Cormine, I got everyone else out. 3 men were trapped. Samuel went in after them himself. Did he save them? All 3. But the official report credited the prediction to Samuel's experience. My name never appeared anywhere. Clara's reflection wavered in the water. Samuel made sure I got copies of all his geological surveys before he left. Said someday I'd need proof of what I knew. Those surveys now lay hidden in Thomas's Bible, evidence of silver deposits that could reshape Arizona's future. Clara had spent years adding her own observations, creating the most detailed mineral map of the territory. The sound of approaching horses broke the desert silence. Clara tense, but Josiah raised a calming hand. That's different horses. Lighter steps. A woman emerged from the darkness leading a pack mule. She was small and weathered, with steel-gray hair and suspicious eyes. Martha Clemens, the territory's only female prospector. Heard you had company, Cross, Martha said, studying Clara carefully. Martha, this is Lark. Lark, Martha's been mining these hills longer than anyone. Martha's expression softened slightly. You're the one they're calling cursed. Clara nodded. Among other things. Bunch of superstitious fools. I know what really happened at those mines. Martha dismounted, accepting Josiah's offer of coffee. Been watching Thornfield's operation for months. Seen things that don't add up. She pulled out a leather pouch filled with ore samples. Found these in a played-out shaft Thornfield abandoned last year. Rich as anything I've seen. Why would he walk away from good silver? Clara examined the samples under lamplight. Her eyes widened. He didn't walk away. He's stockpiling, keeping the good ore secret while filing reports claiming the mines are worthless. But why? To control prices. Buy up surrounding land cheap, then reveal the true value after he owns everything. Clara's mind raced through the implications. Martha, how many abandoned claims has Thornfield purchased in the last year? Near a dozen. always right after mysterious accidents or equipment failures. The pieces fell into place like stones settling into foundation. Thornfield wasn't just covering up Thomas's murder. He was orchestrating a massive land grab, using fear and false information. Clara opened Thomas's Bible, revealing the pressed geological surveys. My husband discovered Thornfield's been filing fraudulent reports for years. The real mineral deposits are 10 times what he's claimed publicly. Martha whistled low. That's territorial fraud. Federal crime. It's also our way to stop him. Clara looked between her new allies. But we need that deed first. Proof of legal ownership that even Thornfield can't dispute. Josiah checked his rifle. Cemetery's guarded now. Getting to Thomas's grave won't be easy. Then we don't go at night like thieves, Clara said. We go tomorrow during funeral services when half the town's distracted by grief. The plan crystallized around the kitchen table, simple, dangerous, and completely dependent on Clara's ability to locate the deed's exact hiding place. She'd have one. Chance to retrieve the evidence that could save the territory from Thornfield's conspiracy. Outside, coyotes howled in the distance, their voices carrying across the desert like warnings of the storm to come. The funeral bell tolled across Millfield as Clara crept through the cemetery's back entrance. Old Pete Morrison's burial drew half the town to the front gates, their attention fixed on the preacher's words about eternal rest. Clara knew better. In mining towns, rest was a luxury few could afford. She found Thomas's grave easily. The headstone still sat crooked, carved hastily by a reluctant mason. Someone had trampled the surrounding earth, searching for whatever Thomas might have hidden. They'd looked everywhere, except the right place. Clara knelt beside a gnarled mesquite tree 10 feet from the grave. Thomas had been clever. The deed wasn't buried with his body where grave robbers would eventually look. It was hidden where only she would think to search. Her fingers found the hollow in the tree's base, just above the root line. The oiled leather pouch crinkled as she pulled it free. Inside, legal documents that could topple an empire of lies. Find what you're looking for? Clara spun. Deputy Hayes stood between her and the cemetery gate, his hand resting on his gun. 2 more deputies flanked him from behind weathered headstones. Just visiting my husband, Clara said calmly. With a shovel? Clara hadn't brought a shovel, but Hayes wanted an excuse for arrest. Truth had never mattered to men like him. She slipped the pouch into her dress pocket. Planting flowers for Thomas. He loved desert roses. Hayes stepped closer. Funny thing about roses. They don't grow in graveyards. Too much death in the soil. The funeral hymn drifted from the front of the cemetery. Clara calculated distances. 30 yards to the back gate. 3 armed men between her and freedom. The odds weren't encouraging. Course, some folks bring different kinds of flowers to graves, Hayes continued. Information flowers, evidence flowers. Things that might embarrass important people. Clara stood slowly, keeping her hands visible. I don't know what you mean. I think you know exactly what I mean, witch. The word hung between them like a blade. Clara had heard it whispered behind her back for weeks. Now it was spoken openly, with official authority behind it. A gunshot cracked from the direction of town, then another. Hayes and his men turned instinctively toward the sound. Clara ran. She vaulted the cemetery's low stone wall and sprinted toward the desert. Behind her, Hayes shouted orders. Boots pounded against packed earth. More gunshots echoed from Millfield's main street. Clara reached the arranged meeting point as planned. Josiah waited with 2 horses, Martha beside him clutching a smoking rifle. What was the shooting? Clara gasped. Martha grinned. Accidentally discharged my rifle near the saloon. Amazing how jumpy folks get during funerals. They rode hard toward the Territorial Records office in Tucson, the deed burning like fire in Clara's pocket. The document represented more than legal ownership. It was proof that everything Thornfield claimed about mineral deposits was deliberately false. The territorial office occupied a squat adobe building that had seen better decades. Clerk Winston Haley looked up from his ledgers with the weary expression of a man who'd processed too many dubious land claims. "We need to file a mineral rights dispute," Clara said. Haley's eyes narrowed when he saw her skin color. "You'll need a white man to file legal documents." "She's filing as my business partner," Josiah interjected smoothly. The lie came easily. Now, partnership felt more natural than the truth anyway. Haley accepted the explanation with bureaucratic indifference. Clara spread Thomas's deed across the clerk's desk alongside detailed geological surveys. Haley's eyebrows rose as he studied the documents. Professional surveyors had signed every page. Legal seals authenticated each mineral assessment. "These surveys show significant silver deposits," Haley observed. "But the official territorial reports indicate this area is nearly worthless." "That's why we're here," Clara said. "Someone's been filing false information." Haley compared the private surveys to his official records. The discrepancies were massive. Clara's documents showed silver concentrations 50 times higher than Thornfield's reports claimed. "If these surveys are accurate, we're looking at territorial fraud," Haley said quietly. "How do we prove it?" "Independent geological assessment. But that takes months and costs money most people don't have." Clara smiled. "I can provide the geological assessment myself." "You're a surveyor?" "I'm a geologist, trained by Samuel Hendricks before his transfer to California." Haley's demeanor changed instantly. "You studied under Sam Hendricks? That man could read rock formations like scripture. Where'd you train?" "Millfield Mining District, 7 years of field study." Sam never mentioned taking on apprentices. "Sam was careful about who he trusted," Martha interjected. "Had to be, given the company he worked for." Haley nodded slowly. "Morrison Mining Company. Heard stories about their labor practices." Sam was one of the few decent supervisors they had. Clara pulled out her collection of pressed geological samples. Each one was labeled with precise coordinates and mineral content analysis. Years of careful documentation that told the story of Millfield's true wealth. These samples prove systematic misrepresentation of mineral assets across 12 separate mining claims, Clara explained, all purchased by Mayor Thornfield after filing false depletion reports. Haley studied the evidence with growing amazement. The scope of the fraud became clear as Clara walked him through each falsified survey. Thornfield hadn't just stolen individual claims. He'd manipulated an entire region's development. "This goes beyond local corruption," Haley said. "If Thornfield's been selling these false reports to Eastern investors, it's interstate fraud. Federal crime. How long until we can file charges? Federal investigators take time. But I can flag these properties immediately. Prevent any further sales until they're properly surveyed." Outside, the sun began its descent toward the mountains. Clara felt the weight of Thomas's locket against her chest. Soon, everyone would know what her husband had died protecting. The game was changing. Thornfield's empire of lies would crumble under the weight of geological truth. But powerful men didn't surrender quietly. The real danger was just beginning. The Territorial Records Office fell silent as Clara traced her finger across a map that shouldn't exist. Winston Haley had pulled it from a locked cabinet marked Federal Survey Archives. The document bore official seals from Washington and signatures she recognized from newspaper articles about statehood negotiations. "This can't be right," Haley whispered. Clara's geological training kicked in as she studied the comprehensive mineral survey. Every major deposit across Arizona territory was marked with precise coordinates and estimated values. The numbers staggered her. "It's right," she said quietly. "But it's also impossible." The federal survey showed mineral wealth exceeding California's gold rush discoveries. Silver, copper, and rare earth deposits worth hundreds of millions, enough to fund a war or build a railroad empire. Why would Washington keep this secret? Josiah asked. Clara's mind raced through the implications. Because someone's planning to steal it all before statehood. She pointed to a series of notations along the map's border, corporate symbols and initials that meant nothing to the others, but everything to someone who'd studied mining law. These aren't government markings, Clara realized. They're private investment codes. Haley leaned closer. Investment in what? Foreign mining consortiums. British, German, French. Someone's been selling territorial mineral rights to European buyers. The room temperature seemed to drop. What they'd assumed was local corruption suddenly revealed itself as international conspiracy. Thornfield wasn't working alone. He was a small piece in a machine designed to strip Arizona's wealth before American statehood could protect it. Look at the dates, Martha said, studying the document's margins. Clara followed her finger to small numerical codes scattered across the survey. Each date corresponded to a mining accident, equipment failure, or mysterious death in territories marked for foreign acquisition. They've been systematically eliminating anyone who might discover the real mineral values, Clara said. Thomas wasn't the first. He won't be the last unless we stop this. Haley pulled out additional files from his locked cabinet. Corporate correspondence, shipping manifests, and financial records that painted a clear picture of territorial theft. European investors were purchasing rights to mines they believed contained moderate silver deposits. The real treasure would be revealed only after legal ownership transferred overseas. This explains everything, Clara said. Why Thornfield filed false depletion reports, why he's been buying up worthless claims. He's assembling a massive mineral portfolio to sell to foreign buyers at a fraction of its true value. But why sell cheap? Josiah asked. Because he's not selling the minerals. He's selling the territory itself. The words hung in the air like smoke from a funeral pyre. Clara's geological expertise suddenly revealed the conspiracy's true scope. Arizona wasn't being prepared for American statehood. It was being packaged for European colonization. Once foreign corporations own enough mineral rights, they'll have legal standing to challenge statehood, Clara continued. Claim Arizona as a protectorate instead of a state. Direct colonial control over the richest mineral deposits in North America. Martha cursed under her breath. That's treason. It's also brilliant, Haley admitted reluctantly. European courts would support corporate claims over territorial jurisdiction, especially with documentation proving systematic undervaluation of assets. Clara studied the shipping manifests more carefully. Regular cargo shipments from Millfield to ports in New Orleans, then overseas. But the listed contents made no sense. Farm equipment and pottery couldn't justify the shipping costs or armed guard details. They're already moving processed silver out of the territory, she realized, disguising it as agricultural exports to avoid territorial taxation. The evidence was overwhelming. A conspiracy reaching from local mayors to international financiers, designed to steal an entire territory's future. Thomas had stumbled onto the beginning threads. Clara now held the complete tapestry. We need federal authorities, Haley said, and so sant. There's a mine beyond territorial jurisdiction. Federal authorities might be compromised, Martha pointed out. Conspiracy this size requires inside help. Clara closed the files carefully. There's someone we can trust. Judge Morrison, from the Territorial Supreme Court. He's been pushing for statehood hearings next month. Morrison's in Phoenix, Josiah said. 2 days hard riding. Then we ride tonight, before Thornfield realizes what we've discovered. They prepared to leave as shadows lengthened across Tucson. Clara packed the geological evidence while Josiah secured supplies. Martha cleaned her rifle with the methodical precision of someone expecting Trouble. There's something else, Haley said quietly. The statehood celebration in Millfield next week. Judge Morrison's scheduled to attend. Clara looked up from her packing. Why would he go there? Official ceremony transferring? Territorial mining rights to the new state government. Supposed to be symbolic. But with this conspiracy, the implications crystallized like ice water in Clara's veins. The celebration wasn't about statehood. It was the final transfer of mineral rights to foreign control. Judge Morrison wasn't attending as an honored guest. He was walking into a trap. They'll kill him, she said simply. Make it look like an accident, then use the chaos to complete their land transfers. We have to warn him. Warning isn't enough. We need to expose the whole conspiracy publicly. Force them into the open where they can't hide behind legal technicalities. Clara's plan formed as she spoke. Use the statehood celebration against the conspirators. Turn their moment of triumph into their complete destruction. But it would require perfect timing and enormous risk. The federal territorial inspector will be there too, Martha said. Direct representative from Washington. Then that's where we make our stand. In front of witnesses who can't be bought or intimidated. Outside, the desert wind carried whispers of approaching storm. Clara felt Thomas's locket against her chest, its hidden contents suddenly insignificant compared to what they'd discovered. The conspiracy reached deeper than she'd imagined. Stopping it would require everything she'd learned about geology, law, and human nature. The territory's future hung in the balance, along with the futures of everyone who called Arizona home. The statehood celebration transformed Millfield's dusty main street into a carnival of false prosperity. Red, white, and blue bunting draped every storefront, while a brass band played patriotic songs that rang hollow against the desert wind. Clara watched from behind Martha's supply wagon as territorial officials took their places on the decorated platform. Judge Morrison stood at the podium, unaware he was signing his own death warrant. Federal Inspector Williams sat nearby, reviewing documents that would supposedly transfer mining rights to Arizona's new state government. In reality, those papers would deliver the territory's wealth into foreign hands. Mayor Thornfield moved through the crowd like a snake through tall grass. His smile never wavered as he shook hands and accepted congratulations for Millfield's contribution to statehood. Clara knew better. This celebration marked the end of American control over Arizona's future. There's our moment, Clara whispered to Josiah. She stepped into the crowd, Thomas's geological surveys clutched against her chest. Conversations died as people recognized the woman they'd branded cursed. Whispers followed her like smoke from a funeral pyre. Judge Morrison, Clara called out, her voice cutting through the brass band's melody. The judge looked up from his prepared remarks, confusion clouding his weathered features. Ma'am, this is an official ceremony. Then this is the perfect time for official evidence of territorial fraud. Clara climbed onto the platform before anyone could stop her. Thornfield stepped forward, his face flushed with rage beneath his politician's smile. Remove this woman immediately. She's wanted for murder. I'm wanted for knowing the truth, Clara replied, spreading Thomas surveys across the podium. Inspector Williams leaned forward, his interest clearly piqued. Professional curiosity overcame social protocol as he studied the detailed geological maps. These are impressive documents, Williams said. Where did you obtain them? I created them. 7 years of field research under Samuel Hendricks's supervision. Williams' demeanor changed instantly. You studied under Sam Hendricks? He's the finest geologist in the territory. Clara nodded, then pointed to the mineral concentration charts. These surveys prove systematic misrepresentation of Arizona's mineral wealth. Someone's been filing false reports to federal authorities for years. The crowd pressed closer, drawn by the promise of scandal. Thornfield tried to regain control, but Williams waved him silent. These readings show silver concentrations 50 times higher than official reports, Williams said, studying the data carefully. Because the official reports are fraudulent, Clara explained, designed to hide Arizona's true value until foreign investors could secure mineral rights through legal manipulation. She pulled out the federal survey map they'd discovered in Tucson. William's face went white as he recognized the document. "Where did you get this?" "It's classified federal property. From your own territorial records office, along with shipping manifests proving systematic resource theft and corporate correspondence detailing plans to prevent Arizona statehood." Judge Morrison examined the evidence with growing alarm. His hands trembled as he read corporate agreements signed by men he'd trusted for years. "These documents suggest a conspiracy to transfer territorial assets to foreign control," Morrison said slowly. "Not suggest. Prove." Clara's voice carried across the crowd with scientific authority. "Mayor Thornfield has been coordinating with European mining consortiums to strip Arizona's mineral wealth before statehood could protect it." Thornfield stepped forward, his composure finally cracking. "This woman is a known criminal, a practitioner of dark arts who cursed our mines with cave-ins and death. I'm a geologist who predicted those cave-ins based on geological instability," Clara replied calmly. "Cave-ins that were deliberately ignored because they served someone's financial interests." Martha pushed through the crowd, leading a group of miners' widows Clara recognized, women who'd lost husbands to mysterious accidents and equipment failures. Their presence transformed the crowd's energy from curiosity to anger. "Tell them about the Morrison mine," Martha called out. Clara nodded. "I warned supervisors about limestone pressure that would cause structural collapse. They evacuated some workers, but left others underground. 3 men died because someone decided their lives were worth less than maintaining a production schedule." The miners' widows stepped forward, their faces hard as the desert stone. Each woman carried documentation of her husband's death, evidence that formed a pattern of systematic negligence. "Every one of these women lost family to preventable accidents," Clara continued. "Accidents that occurred when miners got too close to discovering the real mineral values in their claims." Inspector Williams studied the accumulated evidence with growing horror. Corporate correspondence, falsified surveys, and shipping records painted a clear picture of territorial theft orchestrated at the highest levels. "This evidence suggests federal crimes," Williams said quietly. "Fraud, conspiracy, and quite possibly treason." Thornfield made one final, desperate play. "You're going to trust the word of a cursed woman over respected civic leaders? She brings death wherever she goes." Clara smiled for the first time since Thomas died. "I bring truth. Death follows lies and corruption, not geological knowledge." She turned to address the crowd directly. "I'm not cursed. I'm educated. I can read rock formations and predict mining hazards because Samuel Hendricks taught me to think like a scientist instead of accepting superstition." The transformation was visible as understanding spread through the crowd. The mysterious deaths, equipment failures, and mine collapses suddenly made perfect sense when viewed as deliberate sabotage rather than supernatural curse. "My husband died because he refused to sell our mining claim for a fraction of its worth," Clara said. "He died protecting Arizona's future from men who would steal it for personal profit." Judge Morrison stood slowly, his decision crystallizing. "Inspector Williams, I'm requesting immediate federal investigation of these allegations. Mayor Thornfield, you're under territorial arrest pending review of this evidence." The celebration dissolved into chaos as federal marshals moved through the crowd. Clara felt Thomas's locket grow warm against her chest, as if her husband's spirit finally found peace. Josiah stood beside her on the platform, his presence solid as canyon stone. Brother and sister, reunited by truth and strengthened by justice. The desert wind carried away the last whispers of the curse that never existed. Arizona would achieve statehood with its mineral wealth intact. And Clara Jefferson would help build the future her husband died protecting.